one of our recruiters on our team, her husband ended up developing blood clots in the leg and quickly, brought him into a Mercy facility. But as she's brought into the room, the nurse that comes in to take care of her husband in a life and death situation is someone that she had just hired literally like 6 months ago. So when you see it all come to fruition like that, you realize the responsibility that we all have.
So what does it really take for your business to attract world-class talent today? I'm Dave Travers, president of ZipRecruiter, and on Talent All-Stars, we shine a light on the people and the day-to-day processes behind recruitment and retention at some of the world's most influential businesses. Today's Talent All-Star is Scott Sell, the Chief Talent Acquisition Officer at Mercy, a huge healthcare system based in the Midwest. And as you'll hear in this conversation, Mercy is notable for a couple things. First, it's a nonprofit, so it's very much a mission and values-driven organization. Also, Mercy actually wants to be a disruptor, and that means bringing in a lot of talent from outside the healthcare industry.
Scott Sell, Chief Talent Acquisition Officer at Mercy. Welcome to Talent All-Stars.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Awesome. Scott, so Mercy, people who may live out on the coast may not know, but is a huge healthcare system. So you've got a big job and lots of responsibility. You've been there for 12 years. When you got the tap on the shoulder that we want you to run talent acquisition, how did you approach taking on a job of that scale for the first time as you'd come up through TA, but now you're the leader?
Yeah, no, great question, Dave. So what I will say is that as I did get that tap on the shoulder and was asked to lead all of talent acquisition, the one piece that I recognized, having come from other industries before I joined healthcare, was that while Mercy itself was very innovative, very much known for being cutting edge, healthcare as a whole, when it comes to the human resources and talent acquisition, was a lagger. So, I joined Mercy, and truly, our recruitment advertising was one traditional job board that we had, and all our eggs were in that basket. And the piece that you really observed and noticed was we had to diversify the way we attracted people. I think what a lot of individuals don't realize, myself included prior to joining healthcare, is you've got every functional area and scope that runs underneath this healthcare umbrella. We've got finance, legal, human resources, marketing, compliance, fundraising, philanthropy. There's so much that really make up the healthcare gorilla that it is. So part of what I recognized with the elevation was we had to be able to attract applicants and from all different walks of life. We obviously, with those healthcare positions, you look for, people that obviously have nursing background, physician background, those things. But in many of the other areas, myself included, when I joined Mercy, never worked a day in healthcare in my life before that. And, one of the things that I heard loud and clear when I joined Mercy was, hey, we're looking to transform healthcare. And it really wasn't just a catchphrase or, hey, this is a good marketing jargon here, but you really did. When I had an opportunity to meet with the CEO and the chief financial officer and other senior leaders, you really understood that they recognized that the healthcare system and the way we delivered care was not at the same standard of other industries. So part of being able to do that is you don't bring in 20 people that have spent the last, 20 years in healthcare and say, hey, we're going to transform healthcare. Part of our ability to do that was bringing in individuals and talented executives from all different industries and functional areas to really be able to bring in more creative thinking, better collaboration. So the other piece was, I remember coming in when I met with the Mercy team and in between interviews, I would, talk to some of the coworkers and caregivers. And there was a very consistent message of how much they love this place. They really recognized me for my entire self. You didn't need to look at a mission value poster because walking through the organization, I could tell it was a ministry that was committed to quality, committed to continuous improvement, but people treating one another with care, compassion, respect, and dignity. And then many people had told me, we're sort of the best kept secret out there, which I thought, hey, that's great from a cultural standpoint. Probably not a great talent acquisition strategy though, right? So my whole thing was, I don't want to be the best kept secret. I want to get on top of the rooftop and I want to yell and let people know, how great this organization is. what we do for people, the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to bring your entire self to work, physically, mentally, spiritually. It's just unlike anything and anywhere that I'd ever been before.
Okay, I love this. So you touched on marketing and not wanting to be the best kept secret, which is, as you say, like a charming, endearing, and wonderful quality for people to feel, but is not what you want when you want to make sure you're getting the best talent. So how do you advise someone who's starting out on this journey that you've been on, where they may be coming in and there may be some existing practices about how you get candidates and how you approach recruitment marketing, but those are the old practices. How do you advise someone who's starting and wants to start from first principles? How do we do this right? How would you approach it?
Yeah. So I would tell you, the first thing you really have to understand is, what is the story? What is your employee value proposition? Because other industries and certainly healthcare falls into this as well. You don't have a down and out nurse sitting at home thinking, oh my gosh, I can't find work, right? These folks can pick and choose any place they want to go. So why Mercy? And so part of what we really needed to do from a marketing standpoint is, what is that message that we're trying to communicate and convey? And for us, being a mission-driven organization, a not-for-profit, it's a big piece of who we are, and it's a big reason that people stay within Mercy. So what we really wanted to do was, and I think back in my very early stages of recruitment, I always remember, you cast the widest net possible, and a wide net's going to drive, quality, it's going to drive quantity, and it's going to drive diversity. But I really felt like in this situation, less was really more. Like it more focus on the quality, less on the quantity. What I wanted to make sure that we were providing messaging that applicants and consumers really had an opportunity to understand who we were before they applied. Because while it's a great culture for many individuals, like some organizations, it's not always for everybody. So what we wanted to really do is provide clarity in terms of who Mercy is, what's our mission about, what makes us different, so that individuals at that point of looking at jobs had that opportunity to either self-select themselves in or self-select themselves out. And we were able, just the testimonials alone. Like when I talked about, when I came in and I interviewed and all the little informal conversations, be able to sort of capitalize all that and then really deliver that in a cohesive message really made the difference. And I will say, you're better to under-promise and over-deliver than to do the other thing. It doesn't work well to say, hey, we're all this, if that's not what you recognize when you come in the door. Recruiting talent is one piece of the puzzle. Retention is the other key piece. So if you're just churning through folks, you're not doing any good. So I think there's self-awareness that needs to come into play. But I think we did a really good job with that. I think, 2015, we changed the EVP. We were able to really talk a lot more about who we are as a ministry. I think as individuals then would come in to meet with us, they really recognized that we weren't just any other healthcare system, that it really, we pride ourselves in taking care of our patients, but taking care of the communities that we operate in. It's, I've always said, regardless of where one sits on the political fence, or you hear about, healthcare, mandated by government or this and that. The one thing that I really tended to appreciate coming into Mercy day one is knowing that I worked for a healthcare ministry that never turned anyone away that had healthcare needs. I've read, horror stories of people coming in and dying in the parking lot because their insurance, didn't have valid insurance or whatever it may be. Mercy will not turn anyone away that needs their health care taken care of. So you really did. You understood you were being part of something that was much bigger than yourself. And that's the kind of people we wanted to attract. So that'll, kind of lead me to, as my scope of responsibility increased. So I went from leading a team of, 18 people to roughly 140. And, part of what I've always said, and I think really cascaded and felt amongst all the team here, is when you recruit someone, you always think about, hey, if I was to hire Susie and my family, my loved ones needed health care, is Susie someone that I would feel comfortable with in terms of entrusting her to have that responsibility? And you can say, we say that and we mean it. And case in point, we had one of our coworkers, one of our recruiters on our team, who basically her husband ended up where he was developing blood clots in the leg and where it can turn into where it goes up into a clot into your lungs, and quickly, brought him into a Mercy facility. And you can imagine she's a nervous wreck. She had another family member that passed away through a situation like that by not getting help immediately and everything that we needed. So right away, got him in, got the care. But as she's brought into the room, the nurse that comes in to take care of her husband is someone that she had just hired literally like 6 months ago. And so that connection of, I want to make sure that anybody we bring into this ministry, it's one thing to say, they've got the skills and the knowledge to do the job, but it's having the heart. That's truly what I believe separates Mercy from a lot of other healthcare organizations, is that there's a real compassionate heart for what they do. It's not, hey, this is what I do, I get a paycheck. There is a mission and a quest to make sure that they are providing the best care possible, that they're being transparent. When you're at your most vulnerable, when you're in a healthcare situation. But here was a case in point where she thought, gosh, never thinking when I made that offer 6 months ago that this was going to be somebody that would be caring for my husband in a life and death situation. So when you see it all come to fruition like that, you realize the responsibility that we all have.
Scott, what's so powerful as you talk about that is the mission, when you lay it out, is clearly so important. And it's so visceral because a lot of mission-driven organizations struggle with, I know we have this amazing mission, how do we communicate it? And when I hear you communicating about the mission of Mercy and how that impacts who your talent is you're going after and how that resonates with them, instead of explaining, this is our culture, this is our mission, you give stories about how other people have experienced it, and real life stories about a recruiter who then becomes a patient or the caregiver for a patient or the loved one of a patient. Or you talk about what your own recruitment experience was like, and not what the interview was like, but in between the interviews when real people were having real conversations, sort of thing. And that brings it alive in a way that I think when other talent leaders can think about how they convey the mission, don't explain, let me tell you what the 4 tenets of our mission are that you can read here on the poster. Instead, bring it alive in a story. That's so powerful. One of the things, though, a golden nugget that was buried in what you said was, as we were talking about recruitment marketing, is you talked about making the shift from quantity to quality. So I want to double click on that and say, how did you identify that as an opportunity? How did you know that you were having success, and how did you do it? Like, how did you think about, hey, there's an opportunity here. How did we make a change, and how did you measure it or deem that you'd had some success in making that shift?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we really wanted to take more of a 3-pronged approach in terms of our selection process. So first off, is that criteria fit, which, whether you're a recruiter, whether you're a hiring leader, that's the easy part, right? Do they meet the minimum requirements? Do they have the skills, knowledge, and background? Those are the things we can ascertain relatively quickly. But it's those things that are not on the resume or a LinkedIn profile that take a little bit more digging, below the surface. So number 2 for us is, what we call Mercy alignment. And I always say every organization I've worked for has always had their own sort of buzzword for it, but that really is that cultural compatibility, right? Those individuals that truly our values, their values coincide, then it's perfect because you don't have to check out who you are when you come in. And when I leave, I get to go back to being who I am. And then really the third prong, the sort of the approach that we use here, Dave, is talent fit. And with talent, I will say Mercy is very much all about strength management. And what that is we like to know, what is that caregiver, what is that coworker, what are those natural talents that are just part of their DNA? It's part of who they are. It's how they're wired. I always say it's those things that keep you up at night. It's the things that get you up in the morning. But we know as a healthcare ministry that when we put our caregivers in a position where they get to play their natural strengths and talents, the beautiful thing is it never feels like work, but you get a paycheck every other week, which is sweet, right? So what we don't do is look at a talent profile and say, gosh, Susie's really strong in these areas, not so strong here, but we'll work with Susie on those areas that aren't of strength because that's what we need. that's injustice to Susie. That's not setting her up for success. I've shared with my team, and I've said this to friends, colleagues, and others, but if it's Sunday night, tomorrow's Monday, and you've got to go into work and you're dreading the fact that tomorrow's Monday, you're in the wrong place. And I will tell you, we've had some tough days here within Mercy in the 12 years that I've been here, but there's never been a Sunday night where I'm not excited about coming back to work on Monday. And I shared with my team, I said, like, if you ever feel that way, you need to reach out. You need to let me know that. And again, I think as long as you play to those strengths, and at one point, I always felt like I could fix people. Like, you know what? If Susie had the right work ethic and she had the right drive, I could get Susie where she needs to go. And I think about when I first joined Mercy, and one of my phone was ringing off the hook about a nurse recruiter that wasn't showing up for planned meetings, wasn't turning around candidates on a timely basis. So then I remember meeting with that individual, and then I remember taking a look at her talent profile, and you've seen that time management was not her strength. But at that point, so very early in my time at Mercy, I'm thinking I can fix people. So I remember, putting this individual with a mentor who was my best time management individual that I noticed in my first, several months. And she shadowed her for, good 60 days. 60 days later, we turned her loose. My phone was again ringing off the hook, but now they were saying, Scott, I don't know what kind of miracle you did here, but it's night and day. We are getting great delivery. It is really working well. And so me and this, coworker, we're high-fiving each other. We're thinking we turned the corner. About another 45 days, the phone starts ringing, but the message is now changed. And what you find out is it wasn't sustainable. It didn't come natural to this individual. So no matter how much time and effort we worked on those areas that were soft, it just wasn't ever going to be the thing that, she was wired to do. So all to say, we found another seat on the bus. Recruitment wasn't the place for her to be, but it really did help in my own growth as a leader to really recognize even more on that talent and strength science, which is take those things that are strong. You can continue building upon those. If they already are natural and strong, just keep building on it, because those are the areas that one can continue to develop.
Such a powerful framework there, because I think like the natural tendency of someone who's an emerging leader, like you were talking about early in your career, is to say, okay, I've got someone with strengths over here and weaknesses over here. What I'm going to do is say the strengths are great, and I'm going to, try to brush up the weaknesses. And what is so powerful about what you're saying is sometimes it's okay to have pointy people in certain areas where they're not this well-rounded, everything's equally strong. And sometimes tripling down on the strengths is way more powerful than trying to fix the weaknesses when you can live with that, or find the right role where the weaknesses are totally fine, as you said. Okay, so one of the things you touched on that I thought was so interesting as you talked about the way you think about your role is you touched on the word retention, which is actually not a word that often talent acquisition leaders see as their problem, frankly. Like I bring the talent in and then it's up to the organization to hold on to them. And what I love about that is obviously, thinking about the whole organization and not just the recruiting function. That's a very powerful lever. And I think a lot of talent acquisition professionals and leaders actually struggle with that with their own departments even. So how do you think about driving retention of the high performers and the people you want to keep? And how would you advise someone who's taking this on for the first time? I'm coming into a place where, like a lot of places, there's a retention problem of my best talent acquisition pros. How do I turn that around?
Gosh, probably 2 years into my time at Mercy, I remember, again, phone calls ringing off the hook. Oh my gosh, Scott, we've got a recruitment problem here. We've got a recruitment issue. So I'm, getting all these calls. I'm talking to the recruiters, and, they're saying, Scott, we're filling positions left and right. So then we got in and we started digging into the data. And the reality is we were filling positions extremely fast, but they were losing them as fast as we were bringing them in. So then, basically I provided the data. And once they looked at it, then leadership said, oh my gosh, we don't have a recruitment issue. We've got a retention issue. Well, the fact is, and just as you said here, Dave, that didn't take that off my shoulders to say, hey, okay, not my problem. Because, what I said is today's retention issue is tomorrow's recruitment issue. And the fact is, we have to get to the bottom in terms of why are we losing these individuals? And we take accountability on that from the recruitment side, right? Is there, again, are we providing full clarity on what this position is? Tendency for recruiters is part of what we need to do is persuade people, right? I mean, we're not the only organization in town. So we want to be persuasive, but we also have to be realistic and we have to be honest. So sometimes it's digging in to say, hey, are we providing a true vision of what life is like working in this area? So I think to your question, in terms of what do you do from the retention standpoint, it starts with having the right leader. Because, again, every data point, every article you read out there will say people don't leave companies, they leave their leaders. A lot of truth to that, right? I've always said, right or wrong, we spend more time in the workplace than we do at home. And that's just the reality of it. So you want to make sure you're with people that truly you respect. It's a relationship built on honesty, integrity, all of those things. So I think having the right leader in place is important. But I mean, again, we're going through some challenging times. I mean, our first year nurse turnover hovers around 44%. At one point was as high as, 52%. We've got other positions that are more entry level where we're seeing, 75 to 80% first year turnover. And, part of what we've had to do to really sort of offset that is like those jobs aren't going to go away. Like we need someone to do that work, but we have to provide an organization where you have the opportunity to grow and expand. So maybe you accept that position for the job, but you choose Mercy for the career. And we've doubled down on our internal mobility strategy. When I joined Mercy, if you wanted to make a transfer, you could not do so until you had 12 months of service. Here it is, 2018. I'm looking at my leaders saying, listen, nobody's going to suck it up for 12 months if they're not happy. And do you want somebody to suck it up for 12 months if they're not happy? I mean, what does that translate to in terms of team dynamics and patient care and quality? So we did a complete about face and we basically removed that 12-month barrier. So then I had leaders coming to me and saying, oh my gosh, Scott, the time it takes to train somebody and get them all up to speed. And you're basically saying they can just get up and go 3 months into their time. I'm like, look at the data. It's happening. The problem is they're leaving Mercy to do it. If they stay within Mercy, guess what? It fills one position. It's only created one void. If they leave Mercy, we've got 2 open positions here, right? So I will say, with the focus on the internal mobility, we hired just shy of 24,000 caregivers in our last fiscal year. I would say roughly 18% of those were transfers. And prior to us making this change with the internal transfer process, we were probably hovering around 8% of transfers. So significant increase. And that's where we need to continue to go because Dave, and you look at this far much more than I do, but you look at those talent data analytic pieces, right? And we know that, the talent market continues to shrink, right? For every 5 people that are retiring today, there's only 2.5, 3 entering the workforce. So even if you were naive enough to say, hey, we're just going to hunker down and kind of operate the way we are today, that's not going to work. So we have to really, once we get somebody in the door here, if they're culturally connected to who Mercy is and they feel the calling, we have an obligation to help them grow their career here within Mercy. And we've done a really good job with that over the last couple of years.
I love what you talked about in the internal mobility and driving 8% to 18%, et cetera. And what's so powerful about recognizing that the talent is often already in the building is that those people who successfully internally transfer and have had success and have grown and have a steep learning curve multiple times in their career often are the most, to bring our conversation back, are the most incredible communicators and case studies on employee value proposition to people who are thinking about coming in the organization. This is a place, to your point, where it's not necessarily a job, there's a career here. And to be able to show that rather than say that is incredibly powerful. So that's so amazing what you've done. Okay, Scott, so much incredible stuff. We can go on all day here, but I want to get to our traditional way to end an episode, which is pretending you and I are in the elevator. We've only got 1 minute, and I'm the CEO or other executive at Mercy. And I see you're there, and I'm like, hey, Scott, hey, how's it going in talent acquisition? What's the number one thing we need to accomplish in talent acquisition over the next 12 months?
I would tell the CEO, COO, same rules apply with our patients. Our patients have many other choices and options outside of Mercy, but we provide a value proposition to where they choose Mercy. Same thing on the career side, that our candidates, again, we're not the only opportunity in town. We have to provide an experience that is as seamless and as easy as anything else. And as consumers, and that's what our candidates are today, as consumers, we expect things to be simple. We expect things to be able to navigate through things easily. And let's face it, recruitment processes haven't always been that way, right? We've got these, bulky ATSs that were built in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And when they built these things, it was never for candidate experience, right? It was, hey, you guys need this because this is your repository of all your data and information. But the reality is those organizations that set themselves apart really have to be able to provide a candidate experience that is the best, regardless of industry. So don't know if I made that within the 1 minute, but I would say the same methods that apply in terms of how we attract patients is the same methodology that we need to apply when it comes to candidates and applicants. And the fact is, unlike patients, where we're not going to refuse any patients, the truth of the matter is we are going to say no to some applicants. And I remember, dealing with a hiring leader, Scott, this candidate's got 15 years of experience. So the experience checkbox is fit. But when we look at that Mercy alignment and that talent alignment, they're very soft on empathy. They're one who, it's a job. And my conversation with this candidate, the reason they're doing this job is their mother did it and her mother did it, so it was just sort of passed down. But there was nothing that was discussed about the pride of what I do and why I bring myself to work every day. So the fact is that we are going to say no to some candidates. But I want that experience to be so good that even in those moments of, hey, not going to be the right fit, I want that candidate to walk away saying, I was treated with the care, respect, and compassion that Mercy is noted for. And guess what? If my family or loved ones ever need any of their healthcare needs treated, that's where I'm going to. And that's a tall task to deliver because nobody wants to hear no when they're looking for a job. But we take the time to, again, really make sure that we're looking to provide mutual alignment. And sometimes it's just not that.
So what's so great about that answer, so there's obviously a ton of smart content that you put in to directly answer the question, but what's so powerful about that for executive communication is you started with the patient. You started with what's the whole organization do? Now that I put that in context, let me use that same patient framework to think about how we think about talent acquisition, as opposed to diving right into the ATS issue that you're trying to solve, which as an executive, like grounding yourself and explaining, I am part of this whole organization. Now let me explain to you what specifically I need to do, is such a powerful communication tool. I love that. Scott Sell, incredibly insightful and powerful Chief Talent Acquisition Officer at Mercy. It's very clear why you're a Talent All-Star. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much again for the ability and opportunity to participate in this. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Dave.
That's Scott Sell, the Chief Talent Acquisition Officer at Mercy. We'll put his LinkedIn profile in the notes below. And just a reminder, we're an audio podcast also. So if you want to listen on the go, just search Talent All-Stars in your favorite podcast app and tap follow. And if you have feedback for us or ideas for future episodes, send us an email at talentallstars@ziprecruiter.com. I'm Dave Travers. Thanks for watching Talent All-Stars. See you back here next time.